talking about the course of Islamic sciences, and we started very important subject, which was Islamic theology. So last time we discussed about the different branches of Islam. And in the beginning, it is very important for us to know there are different branches in Islam. Like we have fiqh, which is called jurisprudence, and we have theology, we have mysticism, and we have ethics. So uh, when we are going to uh, start this course, and in the end of this course, we will be able to distinguish all these branches from each other. So it will help us to understand and put every thought in its own place. For example, if we don't know exactly if someone is talking about religion, no matter it is Islam or Christianity or Judaism, if we don't know that the issue is theological issue or jurisprudential issue or ethical issue, so definitely we will not be able to understand this one. So this is why it is important to know there are different branches of Islam, and one of these branches is theology, and theology is related to our set of beliefs. So we have belief system, we believe in God, we believe in the day of judgment, we believe in prophethood. So this is our belief system, and theology deals with this system. If something is related to our thinking, our reasoning aspect, then it is related to theology. So first we started this theology, and we we discussed so many issues up till now. But last time uh, in my last session, I was discussing about the differences between different schools of Islamic theology. So there are different schools, and we are going to inshallah discuss. So one school of thought is Shia Islamic thought, and then there are Mu'tazila, there is Ashaira, and some other theological schools that inshallah we are going to discuss today. So when we are discussing these different schools, then the important thing is about disagreement. We see there is a disagreement and they have differences, but these differences are not very dangerous sometimes. And then it is part of the nature of human being that we are always differing from each other. We are having a disagreement with others. But if our intentions are bad, if our intentions are evil, and then we have selfishness, and then we have selfish intentions, then this can be dangerous. So in the beginning of the last session, we discussed that still we can maintain the unity between the Islamic thoughts, despite the fact that there are so many differences and disagreement. But again, there are common grounds and there are differences. If we are focusing on common grounds, then it will help us to keep the unity between Muslim Ummah. So we are going to, inshallah, I am going to share today the text we are going to discuss, and then we'll see here. Yeah. So last time we were just reading this text, and then today I am again going to just start from where we left last time. So according to Ayatollah Mutahari, this he says that to undertake an examination of the intellectual history of Muslims so as to find which differences originated in evil intentions, vested interest, and prejudices, and which were a natural product of their intellectual life. So just he mentioned here that intentions are very important. So if, for example, I have my own intellectual background, I have my own logic, and I am very sincere in understanding the Islamic text, in understanding the Quranic text. Then if I have my own opinion and you have your own opinion, so we should pay respect to each other, because there is no evil intention, and I am also sincere, you are also sincere. So this is what Ayatollah Mutahari is mentioning here. Then he start basic discussion from this place, so I am just highlighting it. He says, before we take up the schools of Kalam for discussion, it is essential to point out that there has been a group of scholars in the Islamic world which was basically opposed to the very idea of ilm kalam and rational debates about Islamic doctrine, considering it a taboo and an innovation in the faith, which is called bidat. So now I just want to explain for you what he's saying. He's basically saying that there are different schools of thought, there are different schools, but there is a school of thought in Islam which is against the ilm kalam theology. And this school of thought is against uh, to bring any logic and philosophy to prove your points or set of belief. He's saying that they are against the ilm kalam and they are opposing the idea of uh, rational debate. So we should not go into the deeper levels or intellectual levels. So this is very important for us, because when we live in the Islamic society and different schools of thoughts are there, different sects are there, and sometimes they don't allow you. For example, you are asking a simple question about God, about existence of God. So they are told from their own religious scholars that you are not allowed to discuss this one. You should not engage in logical debates. So this is why we should be prepared for this ahead of time, that different kind of sects are there and schools are there. So we should deal them accordingly. And then he says they are, and then in what he's saying about taboo or innovation in the faith. So they are saying if you uh, have intellectual discussion, for example, if we are taking something from the Quran and you have intellectual discussion, then this is the sacred text. And whatever the apparent meanings are there, whatever apparently we understand from the Quran and ahadith and sayings of Prophet Muhammad, so this should be an authority on us. We are not allowed to go into the deeper level and intellectual level and discuss this one and try to prove this one. If Quran is saying something, but other sects are like Shia and other even Sunni Islamic sects, so they have different approach. Because if we don't have intellectual approach, if we don't have arguments, so if, for example, there are non-Muslims, there are seculars, they are questioning our belief system. When they are questioning our belief system, then we must be well equipped, then we must be able to demonstrate logic, and we must be able to prove ourselves that yes, this is our set of beliefs, and what we are believing, we really well aware of this, and we understand this one. And then in next paragraph, if you see, the Hanbalis are totally against Kalam. So this sect is basically Hanbali sect. They are totally against Kalam. And Mu'tazilis and Ashari. So they are two different schools. And not to speak of the Shiat Kalam. Even they are against the Mu'tazili and Ashari because they are from Sunni. And then not to speak of the Shia, because Shia are very intellectual, they have more philosophy. So in fact, they are basically opposed to logic and philosophy. So Ibn Taymiyyah, who was one of the eminent scholars of the Sunni world, gave a verdict declaring kalam and logic as unlawful. So Jalaluddin Suyuti, another figure among the Ahle Hadith, and has written a book called Yeah. So Son al-Mantiq wal-Kalam. So this was the book protecting speech and logic from the evil things. So Ilm Kalam and the science of logic. So you can see that they are against any kind of logic and any kind of philosophy. So then Malik ibn Anas is another Sunni Imam who considered any debates or inquiry about about doctrinal matters to be unlawful. And we have explained the Shiite viewpoint in this matter and at other place. So again, we should keep in mind that Malik ibn Anas was another Sunni Imam, and he was also against the logical arguments. So two Imams are there. For example, Imam Hanbal and Imam Malik. So they are basically, if people are following these two imams, so you will see they have less logic, they have less mental exercise, they have less intellectual and reasoning power, or they are not using this one at least. Again, he says the important schools of Kalam, as mentioned earlier, are Shia, Mu'tazila, and Ashari, and Murjia. So we have Murjia also, and some sects of the Khawarij and Batins, such as the Ismaili, have also been considered as schools of Islamic Kalam. So then he is adding that now we have from Sunni school of thought, we have Mu'tazila, we have Ashari, and then we have another school of thought or the sect of Kalam, which is Murjia, and we have Batins like Ismaili, these are Batinis. So Ismailis are considered from Shia Islamic tradition, but others are from Sunni. So now, however, in my view, Ayatollah Mutari says, none of these two sects can be considered as belonging to the schools of Islamic Kalam. The Khawariji, although they held specific beliefs in the matters of doctrine and perhaps were the first to raise doctrinal problems by expressing certain beliefs about imama, the kufr of the fasiq, and considered the disbelievers in these beliefs as apostates. But they did not firstly create the rationalist school of thought in the Muslim world. So this is interesting. He's saying that we have Khawarij, and we are well aware of Khawarij who murdered Imam Ali alayhi salam and who killed Imam Ali alayhi salam. And they were also, Ayatollah Mutari says, that their belief system was not very established or not very systematic, but they also had something in their belief system. For example, they had their viewpoint on imamat and about kufr. So they had different interpretation about kufr, apostasy, of the fisk. So they would say fasik. So who is fasik? You can see here that evil doer, one who commits major sin. So if someone is committing major sin, then this person is kafir, because the fasik is kafir. But if you see from other Sunni sects and then Shia, so if someone is committing sin, whether it is a major sin or maybe small sin, we don't see this person that this is a kafir. We cannot say. But Khawarij, the part of their belief system was that even if you are committing any major sin, then you will be considered kafir. And then this was their own interpretation. For example, sometimes they were accusing Imam Ali alayhi salam that he involved in major sin. So this was their own understanding. And then they were relying on their understanding. So Khawarij are also there. And although he says that rationalist school of thought in Muslim world, we don't have and we don't see in them. And secondly, their thinking was so much deviated from the viewpoint of Shiites that it is difficult to count them among Muslims. And then he says that if we compare this one, because there are different sects and theological sects, there are Shia and then Sunnis and Mu'tazilis and Ashaira, you will see there is a common ground and there are commonalities. And at least you can say that, okay, even they have difference of opinion, they have different approach, but at least they have lot of common grounds. So they are praying the same, they are fasting the same, they have almost very, the major and principal belief system is again same. But when we talk about Khawarij, so they have deviated from the mainstream of Islamic belief system. And this is why, according to Shia Islamic thought or tradition, they are not considered Muslim because of deviation they had, and they have taken distance from the basic aqaid of Islam. And then again, he talks about those who are Batinis. Batin is related to basically then when you are interpreting everything. For example, if it is mentioned in the Quran that you should pray, so they have their own interpretation about that. If you have to fast, you will see that, for example, Ismaili community, so they considered and they call themselves Muslim, but they don't have prayer like the Muslim world, and they don't have fasting as we have the month of fasting, and we are fasting for 1 month, and similarly Hajj and other things, because they are interpreting everything and they have their own approach. But we also believe that if something is apparently mentioned in the Quran and these are commandments of God, so we should obey this one. So this is why we say then they are batin. So they have so much liberty, and they are saying that liberally interfered in Islamic ideas on the basis of esotericism, that it is possible to say that they have twisted Islam out of its shape. And that is the reason why the Muslim world is not ready to consider them as one of the sect of Islam. So this is the issue with Ismaili. But again, I would say that from Shia perspective, our Shia fuqaha, they still believe and they still consider them Muslim. But many Sunni traditions and then sects, they don't consider them Muslim. And this is why he's mentioning a very beautiful point. About 30 years ago, when the Darut Taqreeb Bain al-Mazahib al-Islamiyya was established in Cairo, the Imamiyya Shia, the Zaidiya, the Hanafi, the Shafi, the Maliki, and Hanbali sects, each of them had a representative. But the Ismailis tried hard to send representative of their own, but it was not accepted by other Muslims. So contrary to the Khawarij, who did not create a system of thought, the Batinis, despite their serious deviations, do have significant school of Kalam and philosophy. So this is very important aspect to understand, that he is saying that Khawarij, they did not establish any system of thought, but Batinis or Ismailis, despite the fact that they have serious deviations, but they have significant school of Kalam, they have their philosophy, they have their theology, and they have very strong scholars, and there have emerged among them important thinkers who have left behind a considerable number of works. You know, for example, if we think that there is a religious tradition or religious school of thought, then how we can validate this school system? Because if there are topmost scholars and there is deep theological work, and then they have philosophical and logical support for their whatever they are doing in the name of Islam, then at least we can say that they have scholars, they have intellectuals, and they have clergies, and they have their own system. So because of this system, we understand the importance and the depth of any Islamic tradition. So he says that there have emerged among them important thinkers who have left behind a considerable number of works, and lately the Orientalists have been showing great attention on the Batini thought and works. So one of the prominent Ismaili figure is Nasir Khusru al-Alawi, and the well-known Persian poet and the author of such famous work as Jami al-Hikmatiyya and Kitab al-Wajh ud-Din and Ikhwanul Ikhwan. So another is Abu Hatam al-Razi, an author of Alamun Nabuwa. Other are Abu Yaqub and Sijistani and others. So he's mentioning that they had topmost scholars, and these scholars were very important, and they have left very significant work, which is philosophical and theological work. So now we are going to start uh, whatever the time left for us. A very important school of thought, which is basically Mu'tazila. And Mu'tazila is one of the important theological school in Sunni tradition. And now he's explaining this, and this is very, very important for all of us to really understand the belief system of Mu'tazila. Because if we are not able to understand the belief system of Mu'tazila, we will not be able to understand the Shia theology and our own set of beliefs. So this is why he started from Mu'tazila. He says we shall begin our discussion, and we should explain later why with the Mu'tazila. I'm starting with the Mu'tazila. The emergence of this sect took place during the later part of the first century of the beginning of the second, and obviously Ilm Kalam, like any other field of study, developed gradually and slowly attained maturity. So this is the general understanding we have. So Ilm Kalam was established gradually and slowly, and gradually it becomes mature. And then he says, first we should enumerate the principle of Mu'tazila, and or what is better to say, the basic and salient points of their school of thought. Second, we should point out the well-known Mu'tazila figures and speak of their fate in history, yani what happened to them in the history. So why the majority of Sunnis are not following Mu'tazila, despite the fact that Mu'tazila, they are intellectual and they had very strong logical background. But the other sect that inshallah we will study and we will see, the Ashaira, and they have more followers, and they are not believing in logical and philosophical arguments. So this is very interesting historical background, and we are Ayatollah Mutari says that we will see this one, that what happened to them in the history. And then he says the opinions held by the Mu'tazila are many and are not confined to the religious matters. So they have different opinions, and or which according to them form an essential part of the faith. So they cover a number of physical, social, anthropological, and philosophical issues which are not directly related with the faith. However, there is a certain relevance of these problems to religion and in the belief of Mu'tazila. So any inquiry about the matters of religion is not possible without studying them. So they also have some other opinions and thoughts which is not directly related to theology, directly related to religion, but somehow also relevant to the theology as well. And then he says there are 5 principles, doctrines, which according to the Mu'tazila themselves constitute their basic tenets. So what are the basic aqaid? And then from here, so Ayatollah Mutahari is starting some more theological issues and in a more deeper levels. And it's important to understand. Now he's saying Tawheed. The first thing is Tawheed, oneness of God, absence of plurality, and then attributes. So first Aqidah and first belief system is Tawheed. And second is, he's saying the justice, which is Adl. So God is just, and that he does not oppress his creatures. Now the second thing is they believe in the justice of God, that God is just and God is not oppressing his creature, and he is very kind to them, he is very merciful. So this is the second. And divine retribution, which is called al-Wa'd wal-Wa'id. So God has determined a reward for the obedient and punishment for the disobedient, and there can be no uncertainty about it. So he's saying that, and we also believe in it, that if we are doing good, so we will be given reward in the day of judgment. And if we are obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so we will be given reward in the day of judgment. But if we are disobedient, then there will be a punishment for us. So this is called al-Wa'd and Wa'id. So Wa'd mean promise. Wa'id mean to warn someone that you will be punished if you are doing this or that. So therefore, divine pardon is only possible if the sinner repents. For forgiveness without repentance or tawbah is not possible. So this is very interesting view. Hopefully we will discuss in more detail. But they are saying that if you are disobedient and if you have committed sin according to the Mu'tazila, then you have to seek forgiveness. If you are not seeking forgiveness, then you will not be forgiven. And tawbah is very important. Repentance is very important for them. Although inshallah we will, when we are studying Shia school of thought, then we will see that what Quran says about this. There are some sins. There are clear Quranic verses that even if we are not seeking tawbah, that we will be forgiven by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So interesting discussion, and we will discuss them. And the fourth one is Manzila Bainal Manzilan. This is again very interesting belief system we have in Mu'tazila, which is called a position between the two positions. What does it mean? He says this means that the fasiq, one who commits one of the greater sin, such as wine imbiber. For example, if someone is drinking a lot, excessive drinking, or adulterer or liar. So these are major sins. Is neither a believer, so we will not consider this person mu'min, nor an infidel. They are not kafir. Or so fasik is an intermediary state between belief and infidelity. So he's saying that they are in between. We cannot say they are mu'min and we cannot say they are kafir. They're just in between, because they are committing sin and they are not seeking forgiveness. So according to Mu'tazila, seeking forgiveness is extremely important for them. And then if someone is not seeking repentance or tawbah, then this person will remain between kufr and iman. He will not be considered mu'min, he will not be considered kafir. And the last one, we will just read this one, and inshallah we will continue in our next session. So the fifth one is al-amr bil maruf wa nahi anil munkar. What does it mean? So bidding to do what is right and lawful, and forbidding what is wrong and unlawful. The opinion of the Mu'tazila about this Islamic duty is, firstly, that the Sharia is not the exclusive means of identifying the maruf and the munkar. Human reason can at least partially, independently identify the various kinds of maruf and munkar. So what he's saying is that that Mu'tazila, they believe in Amr bil Maruf wa Nahi anil Munkar, and they believe that our intellect and our akal can also understand the religious issue. For example, if Quran is not saying something, but our akal can understand that this is also the commandment of God. If saying of Prophet is not there. For example, we will take the example of oppression. If someone is oppressing other, if someone is, for example, harming other person, even if we don't have this in the Quran and in the sayings of Prophet Muhammad, but our akal, our intellect will say to us that this is also religious. So Mu'tazila would say that even we have this capability, we have this ability, we have this intellectual power to understand what is religion and what is the religious commandment, even if we don't have in the Quran. But other schools and other Sunni traditions, they believe like Ashaira, and we will inshallah discuss this one. They believe that if we don't have anything in the Quran, so we cannot, our intellect is not able to say that this is a religious issue or religious principle or commandment. Something must be there in the tradition of Prophet Muhammad and in the tradition of Quran. And then secondly, the implementation of this duty does not necessitate the presence of the imam. You don't need any imam or anyone who is ruling over us, but each and every person has this duty to implement this principle. What is this principle? So they're saying Amr bil Maruf wa Nahi anil Munkar. And this is very interesting principle, and we also believe in it. That, for example, if you see someone that he is doing wrong and not doing good, so you can go and give advice to this person, and you can say to him that you should not do this one. And if someone is, and then you can say that you should do this or that, you should do good, you should not do evil or something like that. But nowadays, it has become very challenging. There was a time when people were able to say to each other very easily that you are doing wrong. And then you should not do this one. This is haram. This is not allowed in the Sharia. But nowadays, we have more individualism. When we are living in the West, we are living in the European countries, in Canada, in North America. So you know that we are more individual. We don't allow other people to interfere in our life. So when you are not allowed to do this one, so how you can implement this principle of Amr bil Maruf wa Nahi anil Munkar? So this is a very challenging situation, and there should be a proper interpretation for this. So we could say, okay, this principle is still there, this principle is still existing, and there is a way out to implement this principle. So, but we cannot go into the detail. But in the detailed discussion, this is very interesting to know that how we can implement this principle in European countries, in North America, where people are not allowing you. For example, you are coming to me and I am not fasting, and I'm, for example, I am eating something in the month of Ramadan, and you are coming and you are just saying to me, you should not do this. Why you are not fasting? So I will immediately, I will react on it, and I will say that who you are to say me, who allow you, who gave you this permission to talk to me in such a manner. So this is why this principle is again the fifth principle of Mu'tazila, and we see that this is part of their belief system. So many things are also in Shia belief system, and there are a lot of commonalities. Inshallah, we will discuss this one, and then in next session we will continue. Thank you very much.